Last year, South Carolina had a very interesting team, and honestly, some people think they should have made the college football playoff. Honestly, I disagreed with the whole 9-3 SEC team stuff, but South Carolina nevertheless had a really good year, got better as the season went on, and built up a ton of hype for 2025. In today's video, I want to preview the 2025 South Carolina Gamecocks as we're going to go through last season, talk about their key players, who they added, who they lost, and then ultimately give a game-by-game prediction. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and preview South Carolina football. Okay, so last year, South Carolina was not exactly expected to be good, but they weren't supposed to be bad either. They would end up starting out the season playing against Old Dominion, and this game was a struggle. Somehow the Monarchs pushed them to their limit, but ultimately South Carolina would win 23-19. In week 2, they would go on the road to play against Kentucky, a game which many people thought they would end up losing. That would not happen, as they dominated the Wildcats from start to finish, winning 31-6, and I also believe Lenora Sellers was hurt. Week 3 ended up being a really big game for them, as they would host LSU. This game went back and forth, and after a very interesting ending, South Carolina would ultimately lose 36-33 in a heartbreaker at home. Now they were 2-1. After that, they'd win a tune-up game at home against Akron, 50-7, before having to play back-to-back top 15 opponents. To start out the month of October, they played terrible against number 12 Ole Miss, losing 27-3. The game was never close. After that, though, they went on the road to play against number 7 Alabama, and in one of the best SEC games of last year, South Carolina had a late chance, but ultimately would lose by 2. The team was now 3-3, and their season looked to be average at best. But then they went off. It first started with a road victory against Oklahoma as they destroyed the Sooners 35-9. Texas A&M was on fire after knocking off LSU, but after they went to Williams-Brice, they ended up getting killed. South Carolina won 44-20, and now they were gaining serious momentum. They would follow that up with a 3-touchdown win against number 24 Vanderbilt in Nashville. Now all of a sudden, they had knocked off 2 straight ranked teams, and they were back in the top 25. For the Mayor's Cup, they would face off against number 23 Mizzou, and in a really thrilling game, Mizzou had a late touchdown, but ultimately South Carolina would squeeze one in right before the end, winning 34-30. Alright, things were going really good for them. Then after a quick victory over Wofford, South Carolina was now number 15 in the country for the Palmetto Bowl. For the second time in 3 years, South Carolina would end up going on the road and beat Clemson, who was number 12 in the country, by way of a late Lenora Sellers touchdown. They won 17-14, and some people thought there was serious reasoning for them to make the college football playoff. As we know, that would end up falling short, as they would miss out on getting in, but they would face off with number 20 Illinois in the Citrus Bowl. Ultimately, they'd lose by 4, and their season somewhat ended on a sour note, but South Carolina ended up going 9-4 with a 5-3 record in the SEC. They could have very easily won both those LSU and Alabama matchups, which could have made them 11-1. The Ole Miss game was never really winnable, and the bowl game has an asterisk because teams honestly don't really try that hard in those. Still though, they probably should have played better. In terms of their team, Lenora Sellers ended up throwing for 2,500 yards with 18 touchdowns, and also ran for nearly 700 yards and 7 more scores on the ground. He got better as the season went on, and he is getting ridiculous hype for this season. In terms of the running back spot, Arkansas transfer Raheem Sanders led the way with nearly 900 yards and 11 touchdowns, and Oscar Attaway also had nearly 300 yards and 3 scores. The number 1 receiver actually became their tight end Joshua Simon, and then behind them, Nick Harbor, Mazio Bennett Jr., and Jared Brown were some of the main targets. Obviously, South Carolina wants to see some improvement in 2025 at the receiver spot. On the defensive side of the ball, Nick Emenwari led the way with 88 tackles. Kyle Kennard ended up having 11.5 sacks. Judge Collier led the way with 8 pass deflections, and Jalon Kilgore led the way with 5 interceptions. South Carolina had an excellent defense, as guys like Dylan Stewart and Brian Thomas Jr. also looked really good, and TJ Sanders and Tonka Hemingway also were really good. Demetrius Knight was also an anchor on that defensive side of the ball, and that's why South Carolina ended up having 5 guys drafted. Nick Emenwari ended up going with the 35th overall pick to Seattle. TJ Sanders went with the 41st overall pick to Buffalo. Demetrius Knight went to the Cincinnati Bengals in round 2. And then to close out the draft, they ended up having Kyle Kennard go to the Los Angeles Chargers and Tonka Hemingway go to the Las Vegas Raiders. they had 5 defensive guys selected between rounds 2 and 4, which means they'll have to make some big replacements in 2025, but I'm sure that they're going to be alright. In terms of the guys that they ended up bringing in, the recruiting class ranked number 22 in the country, headlined by linebacker Donovan Darden, who's from the state of North Carolina. They also got Malik Clark and Shedrick Surratt Jr., and those guys should be able to make an impact at some point. And then their transfer portal class ranked 15th in the country. You got Isaiah Augustave, a running back transfer from Colorado, Demon Clowney, a former 4-star recruit from Louisville, Brandon Cisse from NC State, running back Rishul Faison from Utah State, Jalen Brown, a huge recruit in the class of 2024 from Mizzou, Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy from Texas A&M's Epic 2022 class, and then finally Aaron Noland, a guy who will likely sit 1 year and then start for South Carolina in 2026 at quarterback. I really like a lot of their transfers they brought in, and it's going to be really interesting to see how they all do. In terms of the roster, at the quarterback spot, you bring back Lenora Sellers, who's one of the best in the country and one of the best in the business, and I think he'll be a first-round pick in 2026 if all things go correctly. Behind him, you'll obviously have Aaron Noland, and then you'll have Cutter Woods. I think the running back approach will be once again by committee, as Utah State transfer Rashul Faison will likely be the starter, with Oscar Attaway III and Isaiah Augustave probably being the backups, and then combining that with Sellers' legs, they should be dominant on the ground. In terms of the receiver spot, the guy that everybody is watching out for is going to be Nicholas Harbor, the former 5-star who should break out this year. He'll be their number 1 option, but then guys like Jared Brown, Brian Rowe, Vendravius Jacobs, and Malik Clark should also get opportunities to see the field. And to me, it was kind of shocking they didn't pick up a single receiver in the portal. At the tight end spot, you'll likely have Kentucky transfer Jordan Dingle, and then from there, I'm not going to try to make a ton of projections, as it's sort of just impossible to talk about the defense, all those guys, and where they're going to start, because there's so many moving pieces and so many changes, and not a ton of reliable information. Still though, no matter what, their defensive line is going to be really solid, as Dylan Stewart and Brian Thomas Jr. are both back, and I'm super pumped to see how those guys are going to play this year. Overall, doing a quick scan of the offense, it looks like there's going to be a lot of running, and then probably a lot of passes to Nick Harbor. That's how I see that going, but how will it translate on their schedule? Well, in week 1, they're going to play a neutral site matchup with Virginia Tech, and if this game would have happened last year, it would have been a huge game for week 1, but I'm honestly not really sure what to make of Virginia Tech. Brent Pry had them going in the right direction after 2023, but last season they were all over the place. Kyron Drones is back, but it doesn't really matter. I think South Carolina wins this game pretty easily and gets to 1-0. After that, they come back home and they will play against South Carolina State. This game should not be a struggle for them, and it should be over by halftime. Now they'll get to 2-0. In week 3, South Carolina will start SEC play, as their first game will come against Vanderbilt. With all the nonsense that's coming out of Diego Pavia's mouth pretty much each and every week right now, I'm sure South Carolina will be ready to show up and play, and also I don't think Vanderbilt is really all that good, so South Carolina should win this game pretty easily and get over to 3-0. After that, we have their first 50-50 game of the year, as they will go on the road to play against the Missouri Tigers. As you guys know, I am a Mizzou fan, and I'm going to be as unbiased as possible. I don't think Mizzou wins this game, to be honest. I think South Carolina is a little bit better, and Mizzou will have to work in a new quarterback, a new receiver room, and have to find some new running backs as well. Obviously, there is plenty of talent at those spots for Mizzou, but with this game being in the month of September, I think it's going to be close, and South Carolina wins by probably a field goal. I could also see this game going Mizzou's way, but my official prediction is that South Carolina wins, and they will get themselves over to 4-0. After that, they come back home to play against Kentucky, and honestly, I don't really know what to make of the Wildcats. Last year, they were not very good, as they really butchered the quarterback spot, but this year they brought in an experienced transfer in Zach Calzada from Incarnate Word, and I don't know what to make of him either, as he spent a couple of years in the SEC and never really did much, but apparently he has improved. I think Kentucky probably gets back to a bowl game, but I don't see them winning this game. South Carolina takes this victory, and now they're 5-0 going into a huge matchup with LSU. Last year, everybody remembers how that game went, and I'm sure South Carolina fans do too. I think this will be one of the best games in early October in the SEC, and my official prediction is that they lose. LSU returns Garrett Nussmeier, and with this game being in Death Valley, I see them losing. Maybe they pull off a crazy upset, but I just think LSU is probably going to win because they're at home and they have a slight advantage. Don't worry though. As we head into the second half of the schedule, their first game will come against Oklahoma, and Brent Venables is desperate to get Oklahoma football back and off of the hot seat, but I don't have them winning this game. John Mateer is really solid, but South Carolina will be ready for some revenge, and they're going to come home and beat the Sooners, getting themselves to 6-1. After that, they will face off with Alabama, and last year, this game also left a sour taste in their mouth, and that's why I think they come home and win this one. This is not the same Alabama program that it used to be, and while I really like Kalen DeBoer, he's got some things to figure out still, and I'm honestly still not that faithful in Ty Simpson yet, so based on a preseason projection, I think South Carolina will beat Bama at home. After that, they have another big SEC game as they will travel to Oxford and play against Ole Miss. Just like Bama, Ole Miss will have to find a new quarterback, and they also have to replace their top 3 wide receivers and a couple of huge defensive stars. I think there's just too much for Ole Miss to replace, and while I still think they'll be near the top of the SEC, they've got some question marks, and I actually think South Carolina goes in Devont Hemingway and steals a game there. This would put South Carolina in a really good spot to make the college football playoff, and after a bye week, they will play against Texas A&M. I've already done my Texas A&M football preview, and I made a prediction in that one, and I have South Carolina winning. A&M for me still has a lot of question marks as well, as we only got a couple of good games from Marcel Reed. They still need to figure out the wide receiver spot, and to me, I think they're slightly overrated. I think A&M's probably a 7 or 8 win team, and I think South Carolina's a 10 win team, and they're going to go in there and win. Maybe it's ludicrous for me to think that they're going to beat both Ole Miss and A&M on the road, but I do have a lot of faith in South Carolina. For their final 2 matchups of the year, they will play against Coastal Carolina, and that's kind of a cool in-state game, but it shouldn't be close. This is not the same Chanticleer's team we saw back in 2020, so I think South Carolina wins this game before a humongous matchup with Clemson. South Carolina has stole 2 of the last 3 games on the road against Clemson, but despite this game being at home, I think Clemson's going to win. South Carolina fans can call me crazy for this, but personally, I have a lot of faith in this Clemson team this year. I think Cade Klubnik is one of the best quarterbacks in all of college football. I think they have one of the best wide receiver rooms in the country. I really like their defense, and I don't think Clemson's going to lose this game again. Clemson used to dominate this series, and I think they get back to it. I definitely think the game will be close, but South Carolina is going to drop their second game of the year and finish at 10-2. This would still be good enough for them to make the college football playoff, and I project them to be one of the last couple of teams in. From there, it would obviously depend on the matchup, but my official prediction is that South Carolina goes 10-2, they make the college football playoff, and they have losses against LSU and Clemson. I could easily see some things flipping the other way though, as Mizzou could knock them off, Ole Miss could knock them off, A&M could knock them off, and Alabama could knock them off. I think Oklahoma and Virginia Tech are somewhat of trap games, but I really have a lot of faith in what Shane Beamer is building, and especially their quarterback. Quarterback is one of the most important positions in college football right now, and Sellers I think is that good, but we'll have to wait and see. If you're a South Carolina fan, what do you agree and disagree with? Who is your favorite player or a player I didn't mention for the team? And what team should I preview next? Be sure to let me know down below, leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out one of the videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.